I don't have time to illustrate all the ways in which HR technology is discriminating against such a wide range of people with disabilities. One little example, someone trying to get a job as a Deliveroo driver, delivering food around London, just basic level, minimum wage, facially disfigured. And his phone, he has to show the photographs so that he can get past the application form, the application process. It refused to recognize his face as a face. He can't get a job just driving groceries. You've got people who stammer that get knocked out because they take more than the set time they've got in the video. You've got people with strange voices because of hearing impairments. I have such a long list, but that would have been the 10-minute list. I want us to start by saying it's not just about bias, it's about how it's deployed and by the people who deploy it. So my start point, and if I had only one thing to say, it would be, unless the unintended consequences of HR technology, with and without AI, are addressed, hundreds of millions worldwide are going to be needlessly excluded. We see classic market failure here in that we've got poorly trained HR people, and my little aside is, are there any other kind? And very few people ever contradict me. We have poorly trained HR people who do not understand disability discrimination, purchasing technology developed by people who do not understand disability discrimination, and those developers are saying the buyers don't ask us any meaningful questions about this. And the debate about ethical and responsible AI occasionally talks about race and gender. That's starting to happen. Hardly ever disability. So we created this community of volunteers, including some of the greats like Jutta Treveneris that has already been referenced. And our key challenge is actually just to get disability into the debate about ethical and responsible AI. Chris, I really liked what you were saying about these things have to be, tested for safety. These HR technologies are not tested for safety for this group. We're calling, actually, I thought I'd focus on our call for action now. We have a website that volunteers put out called disabilityethicalai.org. I wanted to put disability ethical AI, but I wasn't allowed to. Perhaps that's a technical issue, Hector, you can help with. We're calling for, so I want to focus on what needs to happen. We're calling for a formal inquiry into HR training, because why would any HR professional buy an AI tool that's going to be dropped into a standardized process while the developers tell you they've removed all human bias? So no humans were involved in developing it, presumably. But the point is that a standardized process actually is inherently discriminatory, because at no point is the candidate allowed, one, to understand what the technological hoops are going to be they have to go through, what kind of assessments. They're not allowed to ask for adjustments. It's just standardized down the road. We're supporting the work of scientists like Julia and Julia Stojanovic at NYU. I mean, it's quite a list now that are increasingly looking at these issues. But what we're coming up against is that, yes, there's always data bias when it comes to technology that's looking at data about people in work, because people with disabilities are twice at least less likely to be in work. The data is never unbiased. But also, of course, they're using what Julia Stojanovic calls snake oil science behind it. So there's a lovely tool now operating in Germany where they interview you by video, and your personality score changes if they notice an oil painting behind you. Your personality score goes much better, by the way. If you're applying for a job, put an oil painting behind you in the video. But your personality changes when they put glasses on. Your personality changes by whether or not they're looking at the words in your CV or the words in your LinkedIn profile. So it's a combination of factors. So while we're encouraging the scientists to say, okay, how do we actually get the science to be robust when it's predicting your future performance for the recruiter? But we're also, of course, asking procurement to say, how do you protect your company when HR wants to buy a tool that is potentially harmful to the life chances of so many? What are the right questions to ask? If we could influence the purchasing, leverage the purchasing power of these corporations, that would be really helpful. because they're not asking the right questions at all. And we're asking regulators to make it absolutely clear that if you do not enable a candidate, one, to understand what's coming as they're applying online, and two, to ask for adjustments to that process, and three, if needs be, to go through different channels that are not stigmatizing, we need the regulators to say, this isn't good enough. This is inherently discriminatory. And I'm hoping we're going to build on the European Union's move towards this EU AI liability directive, where we'll be able to say that actually both the HR director who purchases this without due diligence, so they're not aware of the fact that no people with disabilities were ever involved in the development of the product. It wasn't tested. It hasn't been proven to be safe to put on the market. So the HR directors buying this product are liable, and often now you can, in some jurisdictions, an individual could take them to court and try to prove they were treated badly by an algorithm they often didn't even know was there, but also that the developer, under this liability directive, would be responsible because the message would be you have to prove it's safe before you put it on the market. So I was suggesting that just like on aspirin, you have to indicate the potential harmful side effects on a package of aspirin, when you're buying a tool that's going to assess potential candidates to work for you, it should say on the package, actually, no one with a visual impairment was involved in this. No one, these are the groups that we did not take into account when we developed this. So at least the HR director is alert to the potential harm that would result from deploying it. And of course, the regulators could just do a quick check to see why are none of these HR tools actually addressing the needs of, what did you call them, David? Outlier groups. Is that the jargon I should be using? So I've got two things to end with. I'd like everyone in this room, every time you're in a discussion about ethical and responsible AI, and they're talking about race and gender, to say, and what about disability? Just say it. And of course, the third thing is, or second, where am I? I would like the AI developers, because this stuff is genius that you guys are talking about, could you develop tools that the applicant could use to help them navigate the technologically created obstacles they have to get through to get in front of the recruiters with, so that they can demonstrate their potential to do the job. All the tools now are for the recruiters. Why aren't there any tools to help the job seekers? That's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.